Up P11 on box.
Yeah, every time, mate.
On weighbridge.
Can a simple radio phrase sum up an entire season of frustrations, failures, and missed opportunities? Today we are going to delve into one of the most chilling moments of the 2025 Brazilian GP. Lewis Hamilton's devastating reaction after being eliminated in the sprint classification. But what you are going to discover goes far beyond a bad result. This is a brutal X-ray of the present and future of Ferrari in Formula One. A short sentence, an automatic response, but also a devastating statement. When Lewis Hamilton spoke those 4 words on the radio at the end of his participation in the sprint qualifying of the 2025 Brazilian GP, the entire world of Formula One was silent. It wasn't an angry exclamation, it wasn't an angry protest. It was simply the voice of a man who has been fighting an invisible enemy for months. A car that does not respond, a project that is not moving forward, and a frustration that can no longer be contained. The context of that message is as important as the message itself. Hamilton wasn't just expressing disappointment at a bad result, he was pointing out a repetitive trend, a recurring nightmare. The phrase, "every time," does not refer only to that session at Interlagos. It is an accumulated regret, an expression of helplessness in the face of the repetition of errors, failures, and lost opportunities. In each qualifying, in each stint, in each GP Friday, Ferrari seems to stumble over the same stone. And for a driver used to fighting for pole, podiums, and championships, that downward spiral is unacceptable. What really makes this message so powerful is the way it is delivered. Hamilton's tone of voice says it all. There is no anger, there is no irony, there is no aggression. There is resignation. It's the sound of someone who no longer expects anything different. As if he knew it before going out on the track. As if destiny was written. And that's what hurts the most. It's not that you've lost a session, it's that you've lost confidence that something is going to change. This message also shows us a completely exposed Hamilton. A champion of 7 world titles who, far from the cameras, in the intimacy of the radio with his engineer, lets fall the weight of everything he has experienced in recent months. The move to Ferrari was one of the most high-profile moves in the history of modern F1. He arrived loaded with expectations, promises, shared visions about the rebirth of the Scuderia. But so far, all he has received is an unstable car, an erratic strategy, and an environment that has not yet learned to work with him. The connection with Riccardo Adami, his engineer, is also revealing. The mate in the phrase is not just a colloquial catchphrase. It is a sign of closeness, but also a plea for understanding. It's as if he were saying, "You see it too, you know it too. We can't go on like this." That complicity between pilot and engineer, which has so often been a source of triumph, here becomes a silent conversation between 2 professionals who are witnessing a failure that they cannot avoid. Friday's day at the Autodromo José Carlos Pace, better known as Interlagos, offered all the signs of being a critical event for Ferrari. It was one of the tracks with the greatest history in Formula One, a technical, compact, and always unpredictable circuit. But what began as an opportunity to demonstrate progress ended up becoming one of the darkest pages of the 2025 campaign for the Scuderia. And especially for Lewis Hamilton. Since the only free practice session, the atmosphere was full of doubts. Ferrari opted for an extremely conservative strategy, sending both Hamilton and Charles Leclerc on track only on hard tires. That decision left the team with a minimal data bank in real conditions, without information about the car's behavior with the medium and soft compounds, which would be key for the sprint classification that would be held later that same day. The result was as predictable as it was devastating. Hamilton finished 19th, Leclerc 18th. Both SF25s were more than a second and a half behind the best time set by Lando Norris. It wasn't even poor execution, but a car that simply didn't respond. The Ferrari's limitations were laid bare in every corner, in every braking, in every attempt to find grip where there was none. The first phase of the sprint shootout, SQ1, was a bit of a respite. Hamilton managed to advance to the next round in 7th place, but his performance already showed a worrying imbalance. The car seemed inconsistent. Curve-to-curve transitions were erratic, and steering corrections were constant. Nothing flowed. There was no margin of confidence to attack the corners or to gain traction in critical sectors. The SF25 wasn't just slow. It was unpredictable. But the real disaster was reserved for SQ2. With the clock ticking and the pressure mounting, Hamilton needed a perfect lap. It was his only chance to advance to SQ3 and avoid a compromised start in Saturday's sprint. Then the unthinkable happened. Just as Hamilton began his final attempt, Charles Leclerc, his own teammate, lost control of the car at turn 9. The Monégasque locked the front wheels, became unstable under braking and ended up spinning, leaving his Ferrari in the middle of the track. The incident caused the immediate activation of double yellow flags, forcing all drivers passing through that sector to reduce speed. Hamilton, who was coming at maximum speed looking for his qualifying lap, found the scene right in front of him. The return was automatically invalidated, and with it, his options to advance disappeared. But the most frustrating thing came later. Even without the interference of the flags, the time Hamilton was setting would not have been enough. I would have finished 14th. Outside of SQ3 anyway. This was not simply bad luck. It was evidence that the SF25 lacks the basic rhythm necessary to compete on equal terms. The car does not give Hamilton any tools to fight for front positions in normal conditions. And in a sprint format where everything is decided in a couple of laps, that deficit becomes a condemnation. And the most ironic of all is that Ferrari, by trying to manage the risks with a conservative strategy, ended up exposing itself to the worst-case scenario. Without real data, with a wrong configuration and with two frustrated drivers, Friday at Interlagos became a symbol of the current state of Ferrari. A team trapped between wrong decisions, imprecise execution, and an unresponsive car. Leclerc's spin was not just a driving error. It was a perfect metaphor for a team that loses control in moments where precision is most needed. And in the midst of all this, Hamilton was trapped in a system that promised glory and is only delivering resignation. Friday in Brazil was not just any day. It was a painful confirmation that today Ferrari is not up to par with its star driver. And that has profound consequences not only for the championship, but for the relationship between both parties. The elimination of Lewis Hamilton in SQ2 was already a hard blow for Ferrari, but what came next intensified the tension even more. The stewards, in a decision that surprised many, called Hamilton for a formal investigation for a possible breach of the regulations, not having lifted enough under double yellow flag conditions. Under normal circumstances, this type of review might go unnoticed. But in the current context with Ferrari strategically collapsing and Hamilton experiencing one of his most complex seasons, this warning felt like a direct threat to his competitive integrity. The exact cause was the incident with Charles Leclerc. When the Monégasque lost control at turn 9, the FIA displayed a double yellow in the sector. However, based on telemetry data and onboard images, Hamilton marked a faster personal microsector right in that same area. That small fraction of improvement at that specific moment set off alarm bells. Because although his complete lap was annulled, the simple fact of not having clearly reduced speed under the warnings already placed him in a compromised position. This was not new territory for the British. At the beginning of the season at the Dutch GP, he had already received a sanction for a practically identical case. The stewards then imposed a 5-point penalty on him for not reducing his speed significantly under similar conditions during the reconnaissance laps. That punishment not only pushed him back on the grid for Monza, but also cost him points on his super license. It was a painful lesson and a sign that the margins of error were rapidly closing for him. The difference between that time and what happened in Brazil lies in the nuances. At Zandvoort, the data clearly showed that Hamilton did not brake hard enough, while at Interlagos the records were much more ambiguous. Although he did improve his personal sector, he also took his foot off the accelerator slightly and modified his line in response to the situation. It was a speed reduction, yes, but enough to meet the FIA's strict standards? That was the big question that the commissioners had to answer. Tension grew as the analysis was carried out. Multiple cameras, GPS data, detailed telemetry and mini-sector times were reviewed. Ferrari's entourage feared the worst. A new sanction, no matter how minimal, would have been catastrophic both sportingly and emotionally. Because it wasn't just about moving back on the grid. It was about continuing to accumulate psychological blows for a Hamilton who was already at the limit. Finally, after hours of review, the commissioners decided not to impose additional sanctions. Technically, Hamilton had broken the regulations, but extenuating circumstances such as his partial attempt at deceleration and the distance from Leclerc's incident weighed enough for the FIA to apply a more lenient reading of the regulations. It was an absolution flavored with a warning, a kind of tacit truce between norms and context. But for Hamilton, the damage had already been done. He had not only been eliminated due to his car's lack of pace. He hadn't just been trapped by his partner's mistake. In addition, he had had to endure a new public review of his behavior on the track. Another reminder that your every move, every decision, is under scrutiny. That at this stage of his career, any slip can become a starter. And that Ferrari, far from protecting him, has exposed him more than ever. Hamilton, for his part, has given all possible signals. He has adjusted his piloting. He has been patient. He has taken on the learning curve. And yet, he is further from victory today than at any time in his recent career. His phrase in Brazil was not an outburst, it was a sentence. And also, perhaps, a warning. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.